Task 6.2. Conduct security controls testing. Or as I like to say, okay, yeah, it looks good on paper. But we got to be careful when we do a test, right? We want to make sure the appropriate levels of testing to get what information we need without overburdening the system or creating too much unnecessary friction. And as always, if I don't go deep enough, that's what your AI assistant's for. Alright, so this task has 10 subtasks, so it's a good deal of the meat of Domain 6. This includes 1. Vulnerability assessment, scanning systems for weaknesses, prioritizing remediation, and continuous monitoring. 2. Penetration testing, simulating attacks from outside with red and purple teams. 3. Log reviews, reviewing logs to detect and investigate any security incidents. Synthetic transactions and benchmarks, using synthetic tests to establish performance baselines and validate security controls. 5. Code review and testing, ensuring secure coding practices through manual and automated security testing of applications. 6. Misuse case testing, creating scenarios where systems are used incorrectly to expose vulnerabilities. 7. Coverage analysis, ensuring your security tests cover all the critical areas and compliance needs. 8. Interface testing, testing user, network, and API interfaces to ensure they're secure. 9. Breach attack simulations, simulating real-world attacks to validate the organization's readiness to respond. And 10. Compliance checks, verifying that your systems meet regulatory requirements, including those specific to new AI regulations. It may seem a lot, but these subtasks are interconnected again, reinforcing that holistic nature. Larry, you sound like a broken record with that. I'm sorry. But you know what to do if we don't get deep enough. Alright, let's move on. 6.2.1. Vulnerability assessment. In this subtask, you need to understand how to systematically identify vulnerabilities within networks, systems, and applications. Here are some key points for the exam. Automated scanning. You'll use vulnerability scanning tools to find known weaknesses, misconfigurations, and other security gaps. Prioritization and risk scoring. Once vulnerabilities are found, you'll use systems like the Common Vulnerability Scoring System to score and prioritize them based on impact and exploitability. The goal is to address the most critical vulnerabilities first. Continuous monitoring. Security is never a one-time effort. The step ensures vulnerabilities are constantly being reassessed as new threats emerge. Compliance mapping. You must correlate your vulnerability assessments with regulatory requirements such as PCI, DSS, or HIPAA, ensuring that identified vulnerabilities align with compliance standards. And false positive management. Part of the job is distinguishing between real vulnerabilities and false positives, which ensures that remediation resources are used effectively. I always warn people, it's like when your smoke detector goes off. You don't automatically evacuate the premise and start spraying anything, right? It could be somebody was just cooking popcorn and burn it. So for the exam, understanding the vulnerability management lifecycle, identifying, assessing, prioritizing, and remediating vulnerabilities is essential. Vulnerability assessment connects directly with other tasks like compliance checking, pen testing, reinforcing that no single concept exists in isolation. 6.2.2. Penetration testing. This is an important security control where you simulate real-world attacks to evaluate how well your defenses hold up. For the exam, here are some critical aspects you need to understand. Red team exercises. These are offensive simulations, where a group acts as adversaries, testing your organization's detection and response capabilities. Think of it as a controlled attack. Blue team operations is the defensive side of the exercise. The team is responsible for detecting, responding to, and mitigating the attacks initiated by the red team, enhancing the security's defensive strategies. Purple team exercises. This is a collaborative approach where the red and blue teams work together, sharing insights to improve both offensive and defensive measures. This cooperation is essential for improving the overall security posture. Scope and methodology. It's important to define the scope of your penetration testing clearly, whether it's black box where attackers have no knowledge of the system, white, sometimes called crystal or clear box, where they have full knowledge, or a gray box where they have partial knowledge of the system. Reporting and remediation. After conducting penetration tests, the findings need to be documented in a detailed report. These should include vulnerability descriptions, their potential impact, and suggested remediation steps, followed by retesting to ensure the issues are resolved. Penetration testing ties into many other security tasks, so expect to see some more of it. 6.2.3 Log Reviews. This subtask is essential for continuous monitoring and incident detection. Here are some key points you need for the exam. Centralized log management. Implementing a centralized system to collect logs from various sources, servers, networks, devices, applications is crucial. This helps aggregate data for analysis and creates a single point for log review. Automated log analysis. Use SIM tools, Security Information Event Management, to automatically process the logs, correlate the data, and identify patterns and anomalies that could indicate security incidents. Compliance and audit support. Regular log reviews are also about ensuring compliance with regulations like PCI DSS and HIPAA. Keeping logs in order supports the audit process and provides evidence of security controls that are in place. Incident investigation. Logs are invaluable for reconstructing the timeline of a security incident. They help determine how, when, and where a breach occurred, and support forensics analysis. Continuous monitoring and alerting. Real-time log monitoring and alerting mechanisms are key for detecting and responding to incidents promptly. You could set custom rules to trigger alerts for specific incident events which can prevent or mitigate damage. For the exam, understanding the importance of log reviews as part of the overall security monitoring is critical. Logs are often the first place analysts turn to when an incident occurs, so knowing how to manage and analyze them is essential. And it also links back to other controls again, like vulnerability assessment and compliance checks. 6.2.4 Synthetic Transactions Benchmarks. This subtask focuses on testing and validating the performance and effectiveness of security controls, and here's what you need to know for the exam. Performance baseline establishment. Synthetic transactions are used to create benchmarks for normal behavior. These baselines help detect anomalies that may indicate security issues. Security control validation. You'll use synthetic transactions to test the effectiveness of security controls, such as firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and data loss prevention systems. This helps ensure that the controls are working as intended. Continuous availability monitoring. Automated synthetic transactions can be used to regularly test critical systems, making sure they remain available and detecting outages or performance issues quickly. Load testing and stress analysis. By applying varying levels of synthetic load, you can assess how systems perform under stress, helping to identify vulnerabilities that might only surface under heavy use. Third-party service monitoring. Synthetic transactions are also useful for monitoring external services and APIs to ensure that they meet both security and performance expectations. For the exam, make sure you understand the role synthetic transactions play in monitoring and validating security controls, as well as their importance in performance and benchmarking. This type of testing ties into a broader efforts like penetration testing and compliance testing, ensuring that all controls function optimally under both normal and stressed conditions. 6.2.5 Code Review and Testing. This is critical for ensuring that your software and applications are secure. For the exam, here's some things you need to focus on. Manual code review. This involves carefully reviewing critical sections of code by hand, especially in areas that involve authentication, authorization, and data handling. Manual reviews are important because automated tools might miss certain logic flaws. Static application security testing, SAST. SAST tools are used to analyze the source code or compiled code without running the application. This method is great for catching vulnerabilities early in the development process. Dynamic application security testing. DAST tools test running applications to identify vulnerabilities that might not be visible in the code. This simulates real-world attacks on live systems to expose issues. Secure coding standards. It's important to have and enforce secure coding guidelines. These standards help developers follow best practices for coding securely from the start, reducing the risk of vulnerabilities. Interactive application security testing. IAST combines elements of both SAST and DAST, providing real-time security feedback during the testing phase of the software development lifecycle. This is especially useful for catching vulnerabilities during active development. Understanding these different testing techniques is crucial for the exam because they also play a key role in ensuring software security. These tasks also link to a broader security concept like vulnerability assessment and pen testing, ensuring that secure coding practices are an integral part of your overall security strategy. 6.2.6 Misuse case testing. This subtask focuses on testing systems for scenarios in which they could be misused or accidentally or intentionally abused. Scenario development. This involves creating detailed misuse scenarios to simulate how an accident or an attacker might exploit or misuse a system. It's important to consider various threat actors and motivations. Boundary testing. In this step, you test the system's boundaries in edge cases, pushing it beyond its intended use to see how it handles under unexpected inputs or conditions. This can reveal vulnerabilities that wouldn't be otherwise detected, like a buffer overflow. Negative testing. Here you intentionally input invalid, unexpected, or random data into a system to see how it handles these conditions. It helps ensure that systems can gracefully handle invalid inputs without introducing security risks. Privilege escalation attempts. Misuse case testing can also involve attempts to escalate privileges, trying to gain unauthorized access to higher level resources. Simulating these common attack patterns help identify weaknesses and access control mechanisms. And integration with security requirements. Finally, all misuse case testing should align with the system's security requirements and threat models, ensuring that your tests cover all potential risks and vulnerabilities that are important to the organization. For the exam, it's important to grasp the role of misuse case testing in uncovering hidden vulnerabilities. These scenarios not only simulate real-world attacks, but also ensure that systems are tested under the most adverse conditions, tying directly into areas like penetration testing and code reviews. 6.2.7 Coverage analysis. This is about ensuring that your security tests thoroughly address all critical areas without going out of scope. Here's what we need to understand. Test case mapping. This involves systematically mapping your security test cases to identified risks, threats, and compliance requirements. The goal is to ensure that your testing is comprehensive and aligned with the business needs. Code coverage metrics. Code coverage tools are used to measure the percentage of code executed during the security testing. Untested code paths may harbor hidden vulnerabilities, so achieving high coverage is essential. Attack surface analysis. In this step, you assess the system's attack surface, the entry points where an attacker could potentially exploit them. Ensuring these interfaces and potential vulnerabilities are included in your security testing is key. Threat model alignment. Your coverage analysis should align with the system's threat model, verifying that the tests adequately address the identified threats and attack vectors. Gap analysis and reporting. Regularly performing gap analysis helps you identify the areas where your security testing might be insufficient. Reporting these findings ensures that your improvements can be made in the testing strategy moving forward. For the exam, coverage analysis is critical to ensuring that your security tests address the proper areas. This concept ties into other tasks again with penetration testing and all other assessments, etc. 6.2.8 Interface Testing. This subtask is about testing the various interfaces your system uses to ensure that they are secure. Here's what you'll need to focus on. User interface or UI testing. This involves UI elements for vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting, clickjacking, insecure data handling at the client side. The goal is to ensure that users can exploit the interface to compromise the system. Network interface testing. Here you'll need to perform security scans and penetration tests on the network interface to look for misconfigurations, open ports, and vulnerabilities in network protocols. This is essential for securing the communication layers of your system. API security testing. My favorite one again. APIs are that common point of attack today, so evaluating them for issues such as improper authentication, authorization, input validation, and data exposure vulnerabilities is key. Familiarize yourself with API securities, and I would especially look at the OWASP API Top 10. Input validation and sanitization. Testing for proper input validation across all interfaces is crucial to prevent injection attacks, buffer overflows, and other input-based vulnerabilities. Error handling and information leakage. During testing, assess how the system handles errors and exceptions. Interfaces should not reveal sensitive information that could aid the attacker during an error event. For the exam, understand how to test and secure various interfaces like the user, the network, and other special APIs is crucial. And again, they tie back to many of the other concepts we've gone over, like vulnerability assessment in general. 6.2.9 Breach Attack Simulations. This subtask focuses on simulating real-world attacks to evaluate your security defenses. For the exam, here are some key points to remember. Automated attack scenarios. Tools are available to simulate a wide range of real-world techniques, including those used in some recent high-profile breaches. These simulations can test how well your organization can defend against very current threats. Continuous security validation. Breach attack simulations aren't just one-time events. Continuous security validation involves regularly running simulations to test your defenses in real time as the threat landscape evolves. Purple Team exercises. As in previous tasks, breach simulations can benefit from collaboration between the red and blue team. These combined efforts in these exercises will improve both offense and defensive capabilities, reinforcing your security posture. And remediation prioritization. After running breach simulations, the results help prioritize remediation efforts, ensuring the most critical and exploitable vulnerabilities are addressed first. So for the exam, understanding breach attack simulations is important as they represent real-world testing of your security readiness. 6.2.10 Compliance checks. Kind of like my car has to be inspected, very much falls under this purview here. It's about making sure that your systems meet regulatory and legal requirements. Some of the things you want to focus on for the exam: regulatory compliance scans. These are automated scans that ensure compliance with GDPR, HIPAA, whatever, right? Policy and procedure audits. These involve auditing organizational policies and procedures to ensure they align with compliance standards. Technical control validation. Compliance checks aren't just about paperwork. They also involve verifying that technical controls like encryption, access controls, logging are properly implemented and effective. Compliance reporting and documentation. Generating reports to document compliance status is crucial. These reports must include evidence of controls, audit trails, and plans for remediation of any non-conformities. Third-party and vendor compliance. Evaluate third-party vendors, service providers, AI solutions to ensure that they meet the required standards for security and data handling, algorithmic transparency, and ethical practices. For the exam, Compliance checks are essential as they tie directly to the legal and regulatory framework of cybersecurity. All right, wrapping up. Conduct security controls testing. This is task 6.2. We talked about the systematic evaluation. We performed various assessments, vulnerability assessments, penetration testing, audits, compliance checks, all to help identify and address security weaknesses. We talked about the coverage or comprehensive testing. We made sure that we use multiple methods from code reviews to physical assessments to ensure that our security aligns with the organizational policies. And continuous monitoring and breach attack simulations are essential to maintaining a proactive security posture. They help ensure timely detection and remediation of potential threats and vulnerabilities. Now let's try it out with our prompt in the next session, the next slide here. Phew! Well, please help me, oh great AI. I think I got a lot of what he said, but some of this was kind of weird. Let me go back. So again, play with it. I think you know by now if you made it this far. Of course, I always wonder about the guy who said, I'm just going to watch the first video. I'll pick this one. And you just randomly got here. In which case, enjoy. See you 6.3.